So no matter what agent you play, everyone has their favorite setup, their favorite pathing, their favorite one-way, their favorite insults to tell their teammates when they're throwing. And the reason why they're your favorite is because they work. But are they really working, or is it a gimmick? And are you really helping the team by doing these things, or are you just looking like an idiot? For you Sentinel mains, all of you have your favorite setups. For you smokers, you all have your favorite one-ways, you foot fetish freaks. And as for you lineup Larrys, you guys are something else. But you guys all got one thing in common, and while it's not a bad thing, it's something that needs to be addressed. And it's the fact that all of these things I just listed are kind of gimmicks. They all have their time and place, but the main problem I see with these is that people rely on them a bit too much. And what ends up happening is that they get stuck in this mindset that playing for their lineups, playing for their setups, and relying on these gimmicks is just the correct way to play, when really it's just holding you back. And that's what we're going to be going over today. The types of gimmicks in Valorant, when they're useful, and what you should be doing instead of playing for them. So for starters, I think that the most overrated thing in Valorant are these lineups. I see countless guys on YouTubes and they always get a ton of views, but to be honest, you never really need them, and sometimes you end up hurting your own team when you try to play for them. I've seen countless Brimstones and Vipers run away from the site, they run all the way to Narnia and back, they look up at the sky at some little speck in the sky, and they get ready to blast their mollies. The issue with that is that in order for these lineups to work, you need to have everyone on the same page and working together. If you want to play for your lineups, you can't have Reynas over aggressing, you can't have people looking to take duels in the post plant, you need to have everyone trying to delay as long as possible so that you're getting the most out of your mollies, and so that you can delay as long as possible so the enemy can't defuse the bomb. And getting everyone on the same page is really hard to do, especially in ranked when you don't know anybody. So instead of running away from the site, you should be playing on site, and you can use your mollies to delay the enemy from going onto site and starting their retake. Let's say for example that you're playing on Bind as Viper, and your team aggressively takes the B site, but it ends up being a 4v5. Not only should somebody be looking for a kill, but your team is going to need help anchoring the site. So instead of you running down to Fountain to play for your mollies, you should shoot them where the enemy is going to retake from, probably CT. And now that you're in this situation, you're here to trade your teammates and you guys have another gun on site. And if you really think about it, you're still delaying them with your mollies. You're still buying that extra 6 seconds that you have with each molly. What I'm basically saying is that lineups aren't useless, it's just that there's a time and place for everything, and you shouldn't be relying on these to win you your rounds. Okay, so this next section goes out to you Sentinel players out there. And another type of video that I see get a ton of views are Cypher and Killjoy setups that'll rank you up to Immortal videos. And that's what I see a ton of in ranked for my Sentinel players. They're just a bunch of people who don't really know how to play without their setups, and without them, they're pretty bad. This builds up bad habits and slows down the speed in which you get better. Think about it. If you're always playing for your setups, you're never really going to get better at aim dueling people, as you're never really going to put yourself in that situation. So let's say for example that you're playing on Haven and you're playing Cypher. You have these crazy tripwires that reach across the entire site, and if the enemies fall into them, they're pretty screwed and you get a bunch of kills. While the setup is pretty awesome if the enemy ends up hitting C site, but if they go A or B, you basically wasted all of your utility on nothing. And I see Sentinel mains complain about this all the time. If your utility is being wasted because the enemy isn't going to your site, then you should be spreading it out. Nowhere does it say in some magical handbook that you must stack all of your tripwires and dump all of your utility on one site. Maybe you can put your tripwires in garage and on B. These are going to prevent any lurks and help your team hold map control on a map where defending is honestly pretty hard to do effectively. These tripwires help your teammates know where enemies can and cannot be, and with them, they're going to appreciate you a lot more. So even if the enemy didn't rush into a site and run into all your tripwires, you're still getting pretty good value out of them. And no, this doesn't mean that setups aren't useful. Again, just like lineups, there's a time and place for everything. And you shouldn't be relying on your setups to win you every round. And like I said, if you are relying on them, soon enough you're going to fall behind on your mechanics as you rank up, because not everyone is going to be running into tripwires or being shot at by a turret. Alright, so if you main controllers, you basically have a foot fetish. Okay, not really, but because on most maps, your strongest tools are going to be your one-ways. But the thing that people never really ask themselves is that are these one-ways really necessary all the time? One-ways are great because they can get you some pretty easy kills, they're hard to push through, but are they really the best thing to use? Well, not really. Let's go to Split for example. If you're an Omen main, this one-way is probably one of the most common ones that you'll use. It sticks into the wall and it basically allows you to kill anyone who's crazy enough to run through across it into ramps. But this isn't always the best smoke to throw. A simple smoke like this in some situations can be better as it allows you to have a lot more map control, and it'll prevent you from having any lurks as the enemy needs to use utility to go past this smoke. You know how sometimes you see Cyphers throw their cages or Vipers put their walls up and they can just sort of lurk their way into ramps? Well, with this smoke, that's not going to happen. Also, if you're using that one way, like every round, you're eventually going to get countered by someone throwing a flash underneath, an Omen or a Raze, teleporting or satchelating across, or like I said, anyone could just lurk past you and you're going to have a hard time holding Heaven and A side at the same time. And the same thing goes with this one way on Bind. Yes, it's really good, but sometimes taking this amount of space is better than just letting the enemy have it for free. Like, the enemy can just walk up all the way to the box and explode onto sight. For example, like if you're on an eco, this deep smoke on A short is a lot better as it allows you to play more in the enemy's face and get you some more fair fights with your weaker weapons. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the king of gimmicks, and that's the Odin. Because that's really all it is, it's just a gimmick weapon. It's funny, it's kind of a meme, but there's actually a few spots where this weapon can be used. One of the most popular being outside of B-main on Ascent, or spamming the mid window on Haven. Granted that this strategy is pretty good, it just shouldn't be used all the time. The Odin gives you reduced movement speed, and it makes you an easier target as you really can't swing people that easy. But just because it makes you slower, it doesn't mean that these strats can't be used to take people off guard. But that's exactly what you should be doing, surprising people with these strats, not using them every round. Because if you do start doing this round after round, the enemy team is going to start countering you. Another funny way that I see the Odin used is in a bunch of Cypher setups, where the enemy runs near tripwires and you blast them through the wall with your Odin. And yes, this is pretty funny, and like it can work, but you can only use it one time, because after that, you become pretty predictable, and the enemy knows you're really not playing on sight, you're playing behind some stupid wall. Okay, so now we're going to get into some agent-specific gimmicks, starting with Omen's teleport. I'm pretty sure we've all seen those aggressive Omen TP videos with a ton of views, but unfortunately, strats like that don't work all the time, if ever anymore. This used to work a lot because people were newer to the game and didn't really know how to counter Omen's teleport and didn't really know how to listen for it. Omen's TP is built so that it's basically a get out of jail tool and not so much of an aggressive option. Or obviously you can use it to get on top of a box or something, but the way I see it used in these videos is in combination with this big flash. But it can be right if nothing's going on or if you do it all the time. And sometimes the blind doesn't necessarily hit everything, and then the enemy's teammates are gonna punish you a ton because they hear you teleporting right behind them. And then your teammates think you're throwing because they don't have any more smokes, and then you feel bad, and then you're just not gonna have a good time and you're gonna look like a clown. A good time to try and pull something off like this if you really want to is when there's a lot of chaos going on and the enemy can't really hear what's going on. So go ahead and try it. You can use the teleport aggressively, but just make sure you're not doing it every round. Another gimmick that I see a lot of are these ridiculous Sage walls that boost you up super high. Sage's wall is 400 credits and it's one of the best tools in the game. Literally. To use it in such a way that it gets you one kill, usually, and you're traded is almost a waste. Like, sure, it can get you some clips, and once in a blue moon you can kill like 2 or 3 people. But the most effective way for her to use your wall is simply just to stall. Like I said with everything else in this video, if you wall up high into places, you're going to be super predictable and start throwing rounds for your team. It's one thing to go on top of a wall after you block off a certain area, but it's another thing to waste it if you're using it to farm clips. And now one last gimmick that I want to talk about are Sova double shock darts. Yes, double shock darts are super fancy and impressive if you can pull them off, but if you do them all the time, like I said, you're going to be super predictable and you're not going to get any use out of your shocks. Together, they cost 300 credits, and they do a ton of damage. And if you're just using them the same way every round, you're going to start not getting any value out of them. Don't overcomplicate them. Just use them as the enemy's executing onto a site, or when you're trying to delay a post plant. Just don't make it too complicated. Alright, so I hope this video helped you guys recognize what are gimmicks and how you can stop using them and start playing a lot more solidly. Once you start doing something on repeat over and over, it can be hard to recognize that it's something that you shouldn't be doing. And just remember, there's a time and place for everything. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel down below. It really does help us out. And that's all for us. I'm Teets, and we here at SkullCapped want to thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.